Live from BaseCamp, let's dive into exactly what Coinbase and, of course, the base layer 2 of Ethereum have in store, what they're cooking. Let's dive right in. To be honest, the main thing I want you to understand is that we are going to be experiencing a base token. So here we go, introducing Coinbase's base token right here, BaseCamp 2025. What can we actually learn from this particular conference? It's actually pretty exciting. Well, first things first, there is a base token that is coming. And for those of you who have been actually using the ecosystem, bridging over to base from Ethereum, your USDC, of course, your ETH, you're probably going to be in line for some type of airdrop. And now we don't know the exact details, and the team has clearly stated that they're not entirely sure, but let's hear it directly from the team's mouth. One of the members.
I'm really excited that today we're launching a new bridge between Base and Solana.
Okay, so for one, there's already going to be a bridge between Base and Solana. And for those of you developers, you want to take a look, of course, you can just head over to the GitHub Base and look for the bridge information. Everything you need to know is right there. Get your access, start building. And it's beautiful because what you can do is, of course, you can bring over your Sol and other assets from Solana, and that will allow you to actually participate in DeFi and, essentially transfer your value from a totally different chain over to Base. So that leads me to a lot of things. Now, of course, you have virtuals, right? Virtuals protocol. And because of this ecosystem, the fact that this ecosystem has already been creating, multi-chain accessibility, you'll know that you can connect your Solana wallet, you can connect an Ethereum wallet, an EVM wallet, and you can actually get into these Genesis launches. And, if you guys were watching my channel earlier, you would have definitely seen this AI agent video on Virtuals protocol. And this was during the bonding curve days. And of course, bonding curves always will exist for a long time. But, we have Genesis launches and so much more. If you guys want me to actually update on that idea of Genesis launches and more, stick around. I'll do that in another video. Leave a comment and let me know. Okay, so a bridge between Base and Solana is huge. Let's hear a little bit more.
I'm so excited about this. I'm so excited about this. And it's built for developers. The goal of this bridge is to make it so you can build seamlessly across both Base and Solana with Sol, with ERC20s, and with SPL tokens. It lets you do three things. First, you can deposit and use Sol in any Base app. So if you're a developer building an app, you're just going to be able to use Sol. You're going to be able to bring over those balances and have it just work. Second, you can be able to import any Solana token into your Base app. So you can build on the economy that's growing there, help creators, do whatever you want seamlessly across the two ecosystems. And then third, you can be able to take Base tokens that you've created and export them to Solana. So you can.
That is huge. So what I'm hearing in my mind is the idea of maybe, Aerodrome Finance coming in a major way, possibly new levels of liquidity coming into the Coinbase ecosystem, the Base ecosystem. As a lot of you guys know, the Base app is incredible. I've already spoken about that in previous videos. Again, subscribe if you haven't heard about that, and go ahead and download the Base app and dive in, because I do believe it's going to kind of usher in a new, friendlier, realm for people that are diving into digital assets, as it's slowly becoming the one and only method of transacting value in this world right now. So Solana versus Ethereum, versus Base, it makes me wonder. Let's look at a couple of statistics here, okay? A lot of people have been saying that Solana is going to replace Ethereum, and it's faster, it's better, it's this and that, it's cheaper. Well, as you guys know, Ethereum has created this layer 2 economy, which allows for lowered transaction fees and, just kind of a more seamless, better experience for the average everyday user in this generation, considering the fact that Ethereum is, technically significantly older than a lot of these chains. Let's look at a few statistics comparing Solana and Base. And we're looking at things like daily volume, which is huge because the liquidity that flows in through a network is essentially the lifeblood of that network. So as we look at Coinbase right here, Base Chain, we can see that it's not necessarily the most decentralized chain, right? We got stage 1, stage 0, stage 1, stage 2. Currently, Coinbase is on, or Base is on a stage 1. So it's got a ways to go before it can actually become decentralized, more decentralized. But that is not necessarily a negative thing, because within the regulatory frameworks that are coming out of the US and other nations, essentially platforms have a certain amount of time, a little bit of leeway to become more or increasingly decentralized over time. So let's watch as Base does evolve over time. Inevitably, it's going to, because if you think about Coinbase, it started off as a centralized organization before going on chain. So most of it is in essentially a Web 2 type of environment. So I would pay attention to Base Chain and see how the liquidity, how the volume has increased over time. And that will let you know exactly, as you can see right here, right, the value that's secured, right, TVL. We're looking at things, the amount of value that's on the chain is clearly just increasing over time and is going to continue to increase. Let's look at something like Solana and look at its 7-day volume. Okay, this is just 7 day, but we can see that the DEX volume is, 1 billion, 1.5 billion, something like that in 7 days. And then you look at something like Coinbase, and you just look at some of the daily volume on Coinbase, you're actually getting to see, let's look over here and look at this daily volume. As you see, 24-hour volume, 1.27 billion. So, in a sense, Solana's 7-day DEX volume is more or less equivalent to Base's 1-day DEX volume. I don't want to say there's no comparison, but, the numbers clearly speak for themselves, right? So let's dive in a little bit deeper into something else, because Coinbase actually, as we all know, is a major custodian of ETFs. So Coinbase currently has more than 100 million users, right? Roughly 100 million, 105, 110, whatever that may be, is an average between these 2 years. A crazy amount of millions of users across the world. And so one of the members of the Aerodrome team believes or suggests that it's possible that with this 100 million users, we could actually see Coinbase onboarding, roughly 10% of the global GDP. 10% of the global GDP could potentially be onboarded through Coinbase. And now, why is this so important? Why is this so big? Well, if you think about it, the numbers for ETF inflows are pretty astounding if you actually look at the numbers. And Coinbase is actually controlling a huge percent of those inflows, right? Let's take a look at some of those numbers right now. Now, first of all, let's look at some just general statistics for ETFs to understand why this is even important. So approximately 93% of Bitcoin purchased through spot ETFs is custodied by Coinbase. And of course, that would include major funds like BlackRock, Invesco, Wisdom Tree, Franklin Templeton, Bitwise, Grayscale, so and so, VanEck, so much. Okay, Coinbase custody is the primary custodian. Okay, let's just be clear. They hold so much of this Bitcoin. It's absolutely incredible. So to me, the idea that Coinbase could actually, in fact, onboard the users, the masses, 10% of global GDP in the next 5 years, I'm not surprised, because if a lot of that is going to be based on the value of Bitcoin and they're already holding so much of Bitcoin, just do the math and don't sleep. Let's look at something that's also super important, right, about the Clarity Act. And this is going to help us understand a little bit more about the regulations. So essentially it was passed on July 17th, 2025. And this is an amendment made from this, 1933 Securities Act, way, way back. But what it does is it creates some exemptions for some digital assets. And right now, one of the changes that has been made is that issuers can offer or sell their investment contract assets up to $75 million without SEC registration within a 12-month period. So that is going to essentially allow so many businesses to flourish on chain. We're talking about an entirely new infrastructure for the financial world. Brand new, dare I say, untapped liquidities coming in. Essentially, the everyday person is going to be over here transferring assets onto the chain, and institutions all over the place are going to be moving slowly on chain with the Genius Act and the stable coins coming in, allowing for some possible rehypothecation. So if we look at the Bitcoin ETF flows, we can see that things are looking relatively strong, generally speaking. Okay, you could see the assets under management as a percent of market cap. Look at this, just kind of essentially up and to the right. But you can already see down here all these different names. Look at these fund names. They're all stacking BTC like crazy. 87 billion under management, 21 billion, roughly 21 billion, 5 billion, 4 billion, 4 billion. Coinbase essentially custodies the majority of these assets. I know Kraken does, and maybe some other exchanges do as well. But essentially, Coinbase is the number one custodian of digital assets, specifically of BTC. And you ask yourself why? Well, It is, there's a stock for Coinbase. It is an American company. It is totally reputable, recognized, and fully approved, essentially, and more or less endorsed. So I would dive into these numbers and understand a little bit more why Bitcoin is extremely bullish. Okay, and you can see the numbers here again for Coinbase's, user base. Onboarding 10% of global GDP by 2030 is not impossible. Aerodrome is exclusive to Base, and you could see, of course, they're going to support other ecosystems, but we can anticipate to see an increase of Solana assets coming in, and maybe more liquidity, more deposits, more lending, more borrowing, more swaps, more LP. There's a lot. And of course, we're looking at Zora as well. This is the new social fi, the new internet. There's a lot going on here, guys. I would not sleep on this. As a matter of fact, we have an amazing announcement coming up soon. So do stick around if you want to learn more about Zora. I've mentioned it in some of the previous videos. For those of you who have actually been sticking around these days, you definitely know my thoughts on Zora and social fi and all of that. But we have a beautiful announcement coming up soon. So do stick around, turn on post notifications. And if you want to see some of my base picks, these are just a few, and my analysis on them, as well as the reason, essentially the reasons why I think these are great investments and interesting to keep an eye on. You definitely want to stick around to the channel, ask questions, drop a comment, and let me know your thoughts. I look forward to checking you in the next one. All the best. Take it easy.